Hello, and welcome to the Body Fusion Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Heather Demercy. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about belly bloat, aka food baby, aka looking like you're 9 months pregnant, even though you're not. Now, this is a problem that the supplement and weight loss industries tackle full force because it makes them a lot of money. In 2018, the U.S. supplement market made over $31 billion. Yes, that's B as in billion dollars. In 2020, the weight loss industry made over $71 billion. What if I let you in on a little secret, though? That weight loss issue or feeling bloated could actually be a structural issue around your digestive organs that's causing you to feel that way or making it so that you don't absorb your nutrients as well and it doesn't help with your metabolism. That's exactly what we're going to be discussing today. So in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the different types of bloat and where they can come from. So it can be from the small intestine or large intestine or from your stagnant lymphatic system. Then we're going to be talking about how to treat those areas. And finally, we're going to discuss the effects of having improved digestive movement. Let's start with the small intestine. Even though it's called small, there's nothing small about it. Depending on your height, it's anywhere between 15 to 20 feet long. This is where the majority of your nutrient absorption and digestion occurs. Now, all that feet of tubing isn't just thrown into your abdominal cavity all willy-nilly. No, it's held up through something called the mesentery and the mesenteric root. The way to describe this is, if you were lying on your back, you would think of the feet of tube of the small intestine as being like the leaves of a tree. And the branches that are helping suspend those leaves are something called the mesentery. Now, within that mesentery, there's tons of blood vessels, lymphatics, and nerves going through. They're really pulling all the nutrients out of the small intestines and bringing them into your body. And then all of those connective tissues of the mesentery going to all the 15 to 20 feet of small intestine loop then go back to something called the mesenteric root, or like the trunk of the tree. Now, this trunk of the tree is then anchoring the small intestine to the back wall of your abdominal cavity. There is a rhyme or reason to how the small intestines are sitting in there. Another important factor of the small intestines is that it is a huge function of your immune system. So about 70% of your immune system is within your small intestine lining. This becomes important because yes, while you breathe in air, and that's an outside invasion you have at all times because you need to continuously breathe, but also the food and beverages that you consume are a potential for damage to your body. And so you want to have those immune cells in there to be able to scan what you're eating and drinking and digesting to see if what you're having could be potentially harmful for you. Now, this is a good thing to have because the last thing you want to do is be poisoned, but it can also become part of a problem here. So whenever you have an inflammatory response where your immune system is kicking in, what's also happening is that all these fighter cells are coming to the area, and some of those are fibrin, and fibrin creates fibers, and this is where a problem can occur. I like to think about it as if there was a bombing on a military base. The reaction is going to be strong and swift and almost over-exaggerated, compared to if there was a bombing in the middle of the field somewhere that nobody really sees. It's going to take a little while for the response to occur, and it might not be as much as if it was on the military base. So when you have a cut somewhere else on your skin, like say on your leg, it's like that bomb has got dropped into the middle of a field. It's going to take a little while for those cells to get there and say, oh, there's a problem here. Let's send some of the other immune response cells there to deal with the issue and repair the area. But if you have something that you're ingesting something that you might have a sensitivity or to an allergy to, and it can even be a low-level sensitivity, that is going to be a much more exaggerated response in through your abdominal cavity, and a lot more adhesions can be formed. And when these adhesions are formed, like I said, it's just your body's way of trying to protect itself, just trying to fight the problem and go after it full force. Those adhesions can lead to issues later on. So if you have this inflammatory response happening within your small intestine, you know there's probably going to be a little bit more activation of adhesions that are created. Inside the small intestine, there's even more surface area for these sensitivities and inflammatory process to occur because while it's 15 to 20 feet of loop, if you actually look at a cross section or kind of cut up in the small intestine, you'll see there's all these folds happening in through the small intestine, and it just creates the increased surface area to allow for nutrient absorption. So you have these villi that are out there pulling out the important nutrients that you want. That also means it might be pulling and looking at the inflammatory foods that you're consuming or drinks you're consuming as well. So you have 15 to 20 feet of loop in your small intestine, but then if you actually look at the surface area of where some of this inflammatory process can occur, it's even greater than that. If the small intestines are more of the culprit for your bloating, what you will tend to feel is that about 30 minutes to a couple hours after consuming food, you'll start to get that kind of fullness and bloating in through your abdomen. And that bloating will be a little bit more concentrated around your belly button or a little bit higher up into your abdominal cavity. So that means as the food is exiting the stomach and starting to enter the small intestine, there's a possibility for this bloating to be occurring. And also, what happens when you have a little bit more of the small intestines being the culprit for your bloat is you'll actually have increased gas as well. Because remember, most of the digestive processes are occurring within the small intestine. All these enzyme and other digestive juices are going to be going into the small intestines and breaking down the food. So they're not able to do their job properly. Then you'll actually have a little bit more of a chemical process occurring, and you can have more gas occurring as well. So if someone comes into me with bloating issues and they say that it's a little bit more pretty soon after they eat and it feels a little bit more fullness through the middle of their abdomen and they might be a little bit more gassy, I'm definitely thinking that the small intestines might be the culprit for the bloat. When thinking of where the large intestine is in the body, I like to think of it more as the picture frame around the small intestines. The 20 feet of small intestine loop in the middle of the abdomen are kind of framed around by that large intestine, which starts in the lower right quadrant of your abdomen, then goes up the right side of your body, across your body, right at the kind of the base of the ribs of the upper abdomen, down the left side of your body into the lower left quadrant, and then goes to the center and out the rectum. The main job of the large intestine is to pull out water and salts. So as most of the nutrients have already been absorbed in the small intestines, and then I always say that the large intestine is about making poop the poop, making it a little bit more formed and what you see when it comes out. The issue with bloating caused by the large intestine has to do with something what we call transit time, or the time that it takes from you chewing and entering the food into your body to it exiting. So the transit time through the large intestine varies greatly. This can be anywhere from 5 hours to 60 hours. Yes, 60. So the bloating that you feel from a large intestine causing is most often in the lower abdomen and kind of in the pelvic girdle. So you'll feel it in your lower part of your stomach and you'll have this big feeling of fullness. Sometimes you can also feel this along your sides if it's stuck on the sides as it's going through that part of the picture frame. But usually what we'll feel is in the lower abdomen. And that bloating feeling is actually because of cause of constipation or fecal matter kind of getting clogged up in the tubing of the large intestine. Another system that's in your abdominal cavity that could be causing the bloating in through your abdomen is your lymphatic system. You've probably heard about the lymphatic system in terms of the lymph nodes, or when you get sick, how you get swollen lymph nodes and glands in your neck. These lymph nodes are almost like the police checkpoints of the extracellular fluid going through, checking to see if there's anything foreign that it needs to be aware of. Any sort of viruses or bacteria or cancer cells, whatever it may be, it's checking out that fluid. So you know the lymph nodes, but you probably don't understand the rest of the lymphatic system. So the lymphatic system is there to take cells and fluids that were too big to fit into the blood vessels and put them back into the heart to get back into the bloodstream. Unlike the arteries that have this pumping power where you feel this pulsation when you touch an artery, the lymphatics are a passive system of how to get the fluid back from elsewhere in the body to the heart. The lymphatic vessels themselves are broken into little chambers. And in these chambers, you have valves that stop with fluid flow. To get the fluid back to go into the heart, what happens is the one that's closest to the heart starts to empty into the bloodstream, and then that creates an area of negative pressure. There's nothing in that section of the tube. And then right behind it, in the other tube, you have an area of high pressure because it's full of fluid. And so what's happened is a little vacuum effect occurs where the area of high pressure then flows into the area of negative pressure to try to even out the pressure gradients. It's a little bit of physics for you. And what happens is that then it will passively start to move and kind of suction through your whole system. Now, the hard thing with this is that if there's a lot of adhesions through your abdominal cavity, those vessels are going to have a hard time moving, getting the lymphatic fluid to flow, that extracellular fluid to flow out. And so you'll just feel a lot of like water weight gain in through your abdomen. So the bloating you'll feel with the lymphatic system is more of this overall feeling of bloating over your entire abdomen that doesn't really go away, rather, if you eat or don't eat. You just always have that kind of feeling of fullness. Now that we understand more of what the causes of this belly bloat could be, let's talk about treatment. In the small intestines, if there's a lot of adhesions, it will almost feel like you have a basketball in your abdomen that's really rigid and won't move very well. And this is because all those feet of loop don't have independent play. They're not able to kind of move and go around. The way we describe it is that it's almost like a bowl of ramen noodles in your abdomen is what an efficient small intestine should feel like. They have a lot of mobility, they move out of the way, there's not any sort of rigidness. Now you can have more like pasta in there, spaghetti, that has a little bit of sauce, so it's a little bit more rigid, or you could go full on, as I joke, like uncooked ramen. And that's when it's really rigid and has no mobility whatsoever. Now, it might seem counterintuitive, but the best way to get mobility back in these small intestines is to actually stretch the mesentery and the mesenteric root. Remember, that's like the branches and the trunk that's holding up the leaves of the small intestine tube. Because usually the mesentery has become a little bit stiff, and that's what the problem is with the small intestines. The small intestine tubing themselves usually stays pretty mobile, but the restrictions occur more in through the mesentery. And so if we can get a stretching of that mesentery, then it actually improves the elasticity of it, and then it will recoil and go back again. So while it seems counterintuitive, we actually need to think about stretching that away. So ways that we can stretch this mesentery there's a few ways actually. You could be sitting and get your hands and palms of your hands into your abdomen around your belly button. And you want to think about pulling away from your body. And then while you're pulling all of that kind of forward and away, think about rounding your back away. And you'll feel almost like your small intestines are trying to suction away from you and pull away from you, but just try to hold on with all of your might with those palms of your hands. So you want to think about grabbing all your abdominal contents and pulling them forward and then trying to move your body away from it. This will cause a really deep stretch. People usually feel this all the way to their back, which makes sense because remember, the mesentery goes to the mesenteric root, and the mesenteric root is what anchors your small intestines back to the back wall of your abdominal cavity. So you'll feel this deep in the middle of your low back as you try to stretch, and it will feel like a deep, deep stretch. The way I visualize it when I'm treating it on patients is I almost want to think about that like pulling taffy. If you've seen those robotic arms that go around to kind of pull the candy to pull taffy to make it more elastic and make it bigger, that's what it should feel like. It should feel like you're pulling taffy and getting this nice sort of elongation of the tissues. Not like it's a sharp snap back, but just really kind of stretching it and then relaxing through your abdomen. So you can do the kind of pulling through the mesenteric root that way. Or another way is to try mobilizing your own small intestines using the pelvic clock exercise. The pelvic clock is when you're lying on your back with your knees bent and feet flat. And you want to imagine that you have a clock on top of your pelvis, where 12 is towards your head, 6 is towards your feet, 3 o'clock is toward your left hand, 9 o'clock is towards your right hand. Now, if you have a bowl of water on top of that clock and you want to pour it out to the different times on the clock, you would have to move your pelvis in different ways. You'd almost like, you want to think about kind of arching and sagging your back in different directions and going to diagonals. So what I have patients do is I have them first feel what it's like to go in the diagonals. So they're going to go pour that water from 12 to 6, 1 to 7, 2 to 8, 3 to 9, 4 to 10, 5 to 11, and 6 to 12 again. When they're doing that, I want them to feel one diagonal that feels really stiff, hard to get to, or painful. Once they found the diagonal, so let's say that it is the 5 to 11, then I want them to take their hands and put them inside their abdomen, trying to go almost perpendicular to your abdomen to grab some of that tissue. Now, you're going to grab more small intestine because that is 15 to 20 feet of loop in there. So you want to grab it and you want to pull up on that, find an area of restriction within that diagonal. And I have a video of this on my Instagram as well. You're going to feel for that tension And you're going to hold that tension with your hands. Hold that, almost like pulling up on that mesentery. Hold that mesentery while you move your pelvis in and out of that diagonal. So from the 5 to 11, 5 to 11, 5 to 11, all while maintaining that upward pressure on that restriction that you felt, where it felt a little tender or tight in your hands and your abdomen. Do that about 3 to 5 times, then take your hands away and feel that same diagonal again. If you did it properly or got a good spot that it was restricted, it should feel easier, less painful, and more range of motion moving in through that diagonal of the pelvic clock. So you can kind of explore your whole abdomen this way, always thinking about kind of trying to get as deep as you can into your abdomen and pulling up. Now, you're pretty safe that you're not going to hurt anything by doing this, because the only organs that I'm really concerned about would be your pancreas and your kidneys. But those are all very extremely deep. The likelihood of you doing anything to yourself while doing the pelvic clock is very, very mild. So if you don't have any sort of abdominal device in through you, so if you don't have like a lap band or any sort of other implant into your body, this is a safe exercise for you to do. If you've had surgeries where you have external devices within your abdominal cavity, make sure you always check with your doctor to see if this exercise is appropriate or not. Treating the large intestine is a little different than treating the small intestine. With the small intestine, remember, we're going more after the mesentery and the mesenteric root, not so much around the individual tube of the small intestine. When it comes to treating the large intestine, we want to go after that tube. By improving the mobility of the fascia around the tube, it will allow the large intestine to be able to contract and move the fecal matter through properly, which will thus improve your transit time and decrease your constipation. The best places to feel for the tube of the large intestine and will actually have the biggest effect on your constipation is to deal with the transverse colon, or the section of the large intestine that's going across your body underneath the lower border of the rib cage. So what you'll do is you'll be in sitting and then kind of slouch down. You can be poor posture in this case. You're going to stick your middle fingers into your belly button, and then your thumbs are going to go up towards the xiphoid process, or the very bottom of your chest bone. So you want to kind of come up to where the ribs on the lower border of the rib cage kind of come up together. If you're a female, this is a little bit where your bra strap will be going across, the bra band. So you're going to stick your middle fingers into your belly button. Your thumbs are going to be going up to the base of that sternum, or that xiphoid process, and you're going to grab as much of that tissue as you can. You want to think about your hands as if you're trying to get around a hamburger or like a big sandwich. So holding that way, you're going to grab all that tissue you can between your middle finger and your thumb while you're in this slumped down position. And then you're going to try to feel does it feel more tender as I pull down with my hands, or if I pull upwards with my hands, meaning like up towards my head, down towards my pelvis. What about right? What about left? And then based on that direction that you feel is the stiffest, you're going to hold your hands in that direction, and then you're going to try to move your body in the opposite direction. So if I felt like if I pulled down towards my pelvis, it's more painful or more tender, more of a tension there, I'm going to pull down towards my pelvis with my hands. And then what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to extend my back and my head away from it, trying to create a nice kind of curvature in my back to get away from it while I'm maintaining that pressure. Do this about 5 to 8 times, and then go back and check the mobility and see if it's easier to move. The transverse colon is going to give you the most bang for your buck in terms of being able to help your constipation and help the large intestine. It's a little bit harder to feel for the other parts of the colon if you don't know what you're doing. So this is something that you can just do at home to help move the large intestine and to improve your transit time there. Another exercise you can do to help the large intestine move the fecal matter through is something called the I love you massage, and think of it as ILU. What you're going to do is you're going to start in the lower left quadrant of your abdomen. So down in that lower left hip, doing circular motions. This circular motion pattern mimics peristaltic movement, or the contraction that's naturally happening through in the intestines, and especially the large intestine. So as you move in this circular pattern, you're going to start down that lower left quadrant, and you're going to do it for about 10 times, and then move up about an inch and a half and start doing that circular motion there. You're going to keep doing this circular motion until you've reached right at the lower border of your rib cage on the left-hand side. This is the I of the I love you massage. Once you've reached the bottom of the rib cage on the left-hand side, you go back into the lower abdomen on that left-hand side and start again working your way up, massaging through in circular patterns till you reach that lower border of the rib cage where you finished off with the eye. But then you're going to start moving across from the left side to the right side of your body, following along the border of the ribs. So this is going to be the L. When you've reached that lower border of the rib cage on the right-hand side, that's the L of the I love you massage. Now you go back down to the beginning again in that lower left quadrant, circular motions up through that left side to the lower border of the rib cage, across your body, following the lower border of the rib cage to the right side, and then you work your way going down into the right quadrant, and that is the U. So the reason why you think of ILU is that while you're doing this, you're looking down on your abdomen. It would look as if you drew out an I and then an L and then a U. This will help kind of improve that rhythmic motion that should be occurring in through the abdominal cavity in the large intestine, called that peristaltic movement. So it's another great exercise, and I will have patients that are really constipated actually do this while they're sitting on the toilet. I love you massage, a full I love you massage should take about 10 minutes to complete. To treat the lymphatic system, the best way is to actually have a professional give you a lymphatic drainage massage. The reason it's better for a professional to do it is because it's very sensitive to the amount of pressure that you give on the skin. If you ever get the massage, you'll see that it barely feels like any sort of pressure, but it makes sense because most of the lymph fluid and those lymph vessels are actually sitting between the skin and the muscle. So you can't push hard. This is not like a deep tissue massage. It's a very, very light massage to help create this vacuum effect to get the lymphatic juices flowing through. A true lymphatic drainage massage should take at least 90 minutes. If you call to a location and they say it's 60 minutes, run. Don't spend your money. Don't go there. A true lymphatic drainage massage should take at least 90 minutes. So that's what you're looking for. 90 minutes is the golden number. Then you have a good idea that they know what they're doing. The idea with the lymphatic drainage massage is to go first towards where the heart is to then create that vacuum effect. So they need to be massaging, trying to push that fluid through, which then will create that negative pressure area, and that positive pressure area will want to flow through. If the lymphatics are a big part of the reason why you have this bloating feeling, you'll find that afterwards you will pee a ton. That is a great sign of a good lymphatic drainage massage, is that you're going to be urinating a lot more. Because all of that fluid that was outside your blood vessels, that was in this extracellular space, outside of the cells, is going to be put back into your bloodstream the way it should be. And then your kidneys, what are supposed to filter out that excess water, are able to do that effectively because the fluid's within the bloodstream. And so then, as it goes to the kidneys are going to create urine and put it down to your bladder, where for you to excrete it out. So while you can work your lymphatics on your own in a certain way, and you can do the small areas of your body, it's really important to get the full effect of lymphatic drainage massage by going to a professional and having them do at least 90 minutes of it and going through the protocol of the whole body rather than targeting just one specific area, because it doesn't really work that way. You need to have that negative pressure and positive pressure created to have an effective massage. Now that we know how to get these areas moving, what sort of effects will you notice? The first thing that you'll kind of notice is you'll have improved nutrient absorption. So a lot of my patients will see this in their blood work later on, that they're having better levels of their different electrolytes and function through their whole body. This is because now the small intestines are able to actually do the work they're supposed to. Those villi that are inside the lining of the small intestine are able to move around and pull out the nutrients that they need. They're not held back. It's not like they have one arm tied behind their back trying to do their job. They're able to use all of their arms to grab all the nutrients that are needed to your body to function efficiently. This will also help if you need to take supplements. So supplement absorption is a problem, and a lot of times the companies are trying to say that they have improved absorption rates. But even if the company has improved absorption rates from their product, if what is doing the absorbing is not working at 100%, then you're not going to have a great effect from there. So you'll see improved nutrient absorption with mobilization, especially of the small intestines. With mobilization of the large intestine, you'll see that you'll have less constipation and improved transit time. Now, I think it's really important also to get the large intestine moving to decrease constipation, because if you think about it, Traditionally, if you go to the doctor and say, I feel constipated, they might ask, do you have a bowel move at least every 3 days? And if you say yes, then they're going to say, no, you're not constipated. That's normal. But let's think about that for a second. If it took you 3 days to have a bowel movement, and that doesn't mean that the food that you ate 3 days ago is the food that's coming out 3 days later. Probably it's coming out maybe 6 days later or even further out. So let's take all the food that you ate in a day and put it out on a sidewalk at a 98.6 degrees and let it sit out there for 3 days. I don't think anybody really wants that sitting inside their abdomen. I think overall health is to kind of get that garbage out rather than it just rotting into your abdomen. So by dealing with the large intestine and getting it moving better, you're going to be improving your transit time of your food, which will make it so that there's less chance of all of this food just sitting there and rotting in your abdomen and your body still trying to pull nutrients and pull water out of that food. I would rather have everything moving around properly and quickly so that I get the most out of what I ate, but then it gets excreted out through fecal matter. So by moving the large intestine, you'll feel better by not having this kind of toxic gut where all this food's just sitting there, waiting until it can finally get pushed out. So along with this also comes better energy then. If you can get all of that moving, you're going to feel lighter. You're going to feel like you have better energy because your body's only absorbing what it really needs and then pushing out what it doesn't need. By getting your lymphatic system to work properly and move the fluid through, you're going to find out that you're usually sick less often. Because remember, those lymph nodes that are along the vessels of the lymphatic system are the police checkpoints, checking for any sort of viruses, bacteria, any sort of cells in there that are not good that your body needs to fight against. So if those cells are just sitting in through the lymphatic system and aren't going through these police checkpoints as quickly, you're going to have replication of those cells. So if your body can first recognize there is something abnormal in through your system that it needs to create an immune response, you're going to find that you're going to be more effective at treating your colds and your flus and your viruses because your body is able to do the job it's supposed to. So overall, you're just going to feel healthier if you can get your gut moving properly. The cosmetic effect of having all this treated is that you're going to feel lighter through your abdomen. Your abdomen is going to be smaller and you're going to look skinnier because if you don't have the small intestine basketball in there that it can't move, I mean, that's going to have a lot of effect on how your abdomen is going to look if all that mesentery is really tight and doesn't move out of the way. And if your large intestines aren't working properly, then you're going to have all this fecal matter stuck in there. So if your large intestine can move efficiently, you'll be moving the fecal matter out of you. So you're not going to have that kind of backup of constipation. You're not going to have the 3 days of food just sitting there rotting in your gut. And if your lymphatic system is flowing, then you're not going to have this buildup of fluid, a literally feeling of this water weight just sitting in through your abdomen. So the cosmetic effects is that you're going to feel skinnier and you're going to feel lighter and less bloat. And who doesn't want that? On top of also just having a better, efficient, functioning body that's able to do what it's meant to do. So I hope from today's episode that you understand that the weight loss and supplement industries are going at you hard, but if you really want to have an effect on your body, the answer might be actually improving the mobility of these organs. Because if you're asking these organs to work for you, to help you lose weight, to help you feel healthier, to just feel overall lighter, why do we want to have them figuratively and literally held back by a structural dysfunction? So if we want to have the best out of our body, we need to improve the actual structure and the mechanisms in which your organs are able to work. And that can be done through more of manual physical therapy than necessarily a pill or a workout technique to help you lose the weight. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Body Fusion Therapy Podcast. Please share it with your friends and family, as well as leave a review if you liked what you heard today. We're looking forward to continuing this journey of looking at the body. Tune in next time.